So my friends decided to start playing Fortnite again, and I've come to find out that Fortnite has had a rock band-like rhythm game mode for over a year now. While it's cool and all to relive what is practically a commercially dead genre of game inside the most recognized IP of the younger generations, it's also just extremely hilarious, because while your friend's trying to do his guitar solo, everyone just starts playing the King of the Hill emote to get him to lose focus and misses combos. It's so fun. Wait, this is a video about Rupture and its place in ZZZ. Play the intro. There's nothing I love more than when post-launch content updates for video games include new and interesting ways to re-experience the same gameplay loop you've been playing the whole time. PvE games in particular greatly benefit from these kinds of additions, as their gameplay loops have the most potential to be expanded upon with new toys to play with without concerning players too much with if it is balanced alongside the rest of the existing offerings in most cases.
Finished praying, have you?
Where is your patience, Master Dwarf? Have I ever let you down? Victory favors the faithful. Let us teach them fear. For Sigma and the Empire!
This is why, unfortunately, it pains me to say, but I cannot say the same for the introduction of Rupture as a new character archetype in version 2.0 of Zenless Zone Zero. From where I'm standing, Rupture does nothing good for ZZZ and debatably will only present additional problems, both in the short and long terms. Such an extreme claim will require me to explain myself, which is of course what I intend to do in this latest video. The implementation of brand new class of characters in a Hoyoverse game is not a new thing, as it has already occurred in both Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail, with the introduction of the Dendro element and the Remembrance character path, respectively. I quit both games shortly after these were introduced, so this will be fun to see how accurately I interpret these two for my video. Dendro was the 7th element to complete Genshin Impact's element system, focusing on a theme of nature and plant life. From a gameplay standpoint, it's meant to be used as a means of amplification when paired with another element, similarly to Anemo, but with a potentially higher damage output potential if the player can correctly cast elements in the right sequence when compared to Anemo's 1-2 step process. Dendro's introduction greatly improved the overall viability of the elements it interacted with and was a great addition to the game. The Remembrance path, on the other hand, for Honkai Star Rail, by comparison, is an empty husk of an addition that only further blurred character roles and restricted player options. From an established narrative standpoint, the only thing Remembrance was known for prior to version 3.0 was its use in the simulated universe as a collection of buffs and effects focused around hard crowd control through freezing the enemy. But because this is a gacha game, only the enemies are allowed to hard CC the shit out of you, but never the other way around. What we ended up getting, however, in the final product of Remembrance is a vague interpretation of a summoner or pet class. Remembrance characters would have access to a memo sprite, whom would have their own set of contextual actions in a battle based on the kit of the character. There's just one problem with this. Honkai Star Rail already had several characters in the game with summons long before Amphorius and Remembrance black screened itself into the game with version 3.0. Jing Yuan, Topaz and Numi, best girl and best summon by the way, and Linksha were all characters whom included a summoned creature that would act independently of the character based on the unit's kit, and more importantly, managed to do so without needing to shoehorn in a half-baked Aeon path to justify itself, as all three characters simply occupied the erudition, hunt, and abundance paths respectively. Though let's be honest here, Linksha was really trying to put Firefly out of a job. Version 2 power creep was a real bitch, wasn't it? The only meaningful thing Remembrance did for HSR was cutting players off from accessing their pre-existing inventory of light cones. Unlike Genshin's Dendro, which did not make everyone's weapons unusable as character weapons are not tied to elements, Star Rail's light cones are effectively worthless when equipped on characters of a different path, as you are locked out of the primary effects tied to them and are only left with their base stat numbers to use. To this very day, if you pulled Castris and did not get her light cone or buy the battle pass, your only viable alternative is the standard 5-star Bailu light cone for its high base HP stat, and that is it. Aglia is in a similar situation, but at least it's an on-path 3-star light cone. Only the Trailblazer and Hyacinth are saved thanks to free dedicated options. However, both of these light cones are designed to be used by support characters and have no use on damage dealers. Not support as in Harmony or Nihility, but like support as in support roles. Despite there being support roles in Harmony and Nihility. Do you get why the funny pet class has blurred the lines so badly now? With all this in mind, it should be safe to say that Hoyoverse's track record of adding new archetypes into their games has been a literal coin flip in execution. Zenless Zone Zero must now take its turn to see where that coin will land. However, it should be more than apparent by now how ZZZ has only been putting up a front of content-rich offerings in version 2.0, only to peel back the curtain to find a glorified filler patch in hopes of a big break sometime in the future. The Rupture class, being an attempt to maintain that front of new content, may very well have gone down the road of HSR's Remembrance path, while more or less falling into the same traps, with only some improvements, but also new problems to boot. Let me briefly go over the two established forms of play in Zenless Zone Zero. Attack is your typical single DPS unit team setup and is therefore the most flexible. You pick your attack agent of choice and pick teammates that best complement their playstyle, and you're good to go. Anomaly, for all intents and purposes, are your dual DPS unit teams that you frequently swap between to deal damage. Anomaly agents backload their damage by setting up status effects, swapping to the second Anomaly agent, and triggering their respective status effect to activate a disorder that deals a massive burst of damage. Rinse and repeat until the enemy is defeated. From there, you have stun agents to accelerate daze accumulation, resulting in faster stuns for chain attacks and brief windows of multiplied damage. Supports for buffing and amplifying your team's damage, and defense as effectively budget supports that offer worse buffs in exchange for some underwhelming protective barriers. If you've been playing these games for a while, you would know the true value from shields is not the damage negation, it's the interrupt resistance. And seeing as how Caesar is the only one who can offer just that while also having the best shield anyway, I think it should be clear why defense has the least units in the game among the original 5 specialties. And don't even bother suggesting the counterattack playstyle. Beidou couldn't pull it off, Tauchi couldn't pull it off, and Ben Bigger isn't doing any better. With all this in mind, let us now examine what the ZZZ team has done to debut Rupture alongside its only representative, Yi Zhuan, a character whom is repeatedly told through dialogue and promotional material to be on the same power level as a Void Hunter. And since we all know how strong Miyabi is, even when compared to DPS characters released after her, Yi Zhuan will likely set the ceiling for Rupture agents' effectiveness, and every subsequent Rupture agent is likely to not be as strong as her. The fact of the matter is, Rupture agents as of right now are only defined by one thing only: the use of sheer force. A new stat exclusive to Rupture agents that increases damage through negating enemy defenses. You needed a completely new class of unit to add this into the game, ignoring defense? Then do you want to go ahead and explain Jane Doe's Mindscape 2? Miyabi's Mindscape 1? How about Evelyn's Mindscape 1? Or maybe Hugo's Mindscape 2? Because last I checked, none of these characters are Rupture agents, yet they have defense-ignoring effects in their extended kits. So explain to me how defense negation as a stat is so substantial that we could design an entirely new archetype around it? Are you serious? Well, okay, that's not true, right? Maybe it's the miasma mechanic. Rupture agents can ignore a massive chunk of the defense provided from the miasma shield, so surely that's their purpose, right? Well, no. Because even if Rupture agents can on paper deal more damage to miasma shielded enemies, they cannot negate all of the defense provided by a miasma shield, and would prefer to clear it just as fast as every other character. On top of that, Yi Zhuan's effectiveness against miasma enemies is a massive outlier, as the more valuable thing about her kit for dealing with miasma shields is not the sheer damage stat, but her playstyle being designed around having a second ultimate. Ultimates are one of 3 additional means in combat to clear miasma shields faster alongside dodge counters and defensive assists, and are objectively the fastest, as they deal the most miasma shield damage and are not reliant on the enemy to attack you to use. To double down on that fact, Yi Zhuan's best teammate, Jufufu, trades in the traditional stun damage multiplier most stunner agents have in favor of giving a massive boost to the team's decibel resource generation, further separating Yi Zhuan's effectiveness at stripping miasma not because she's a Rupture agent, but because she's a glorified attack agent with a gimmick centered around spamming ultimates. Beyond that, the only other description for Rupture agents that I could find was a quote from the 2.0 livestream, where they are described as, quote, possessing a mix of both offensive capabilities and survivability. Again, we are working with incredibly vague descriptions to act as the foundation for an entirely new class of characters. Billy Kid and Zhu Yuan can both reposition while firing with moves that have built-in dodge properties. Ellen and Miyabi both have parry properties built into some of their moves. Vivian, straight up, cannot be hit while she is flying. None of these characters are classified as Rupture agents, yet I would identify all of the aforementioned moves as contributing to a character's survivability. As it stands as of right now, Rupture as a new specialty in Zenless Zone Zero suffers the same one-to-one problems as Remembrance currently does in Honkai Star Rail. The only real positives I can say of Rupture as of right now is that Yi Zhuan's strength outside of miasma shields looks to be on par with other S-rank agents in terms of power, and therefore, power creep as of this very moment does not seem to be an issue right now. I must stress that. Right now. The other noteworthy thing is that Rupture at least has access to an easy-to-craft A-rank W engine in the form of the Puzzle Sphere, though this can be debated heavily as one of its secondary effects requires the enemy to be below half health, making this a half-functioning W engine in Deadly Assault content. Beyond that, it doesn't offer any meaningful changes to how players interact with team building or moment-to-moment combat when compared to attack or anomaly agents. All this really did, for most players, was lock them out of using pre-existing viable W engine options for any Rupture agent going forward, which in turn further diminishes the value proposition of wanting to pull for any new Rupture agent in the first place. The only way Rupture can be given any value at this point is to design new enemies and content around the sheer damage stat to pressure players into pulling for Rupture agents. But if we ever reach that point, then Zenless Zone Zero's chances to be taken seriously outside of its direct social media outlets will be well and truly cooked. And with that, I have said all I really wanted to about the debut of the Rupture specialty in Zenless Zone Zero version 2.0. Pandora's box has been well and truly open with this one, guys. And if the ZZZ team can't quickly figure out what they want to do with the Rupture agents, we're rapidly heading towards the same problems presented by the Remembrance path for Honkai Star Rail. And with how pressed the ZZZ team are in trying to simply offer worthwhile content for ZZZ in future version 2 updates, I doubt we'll really see any substantial adjustments to Rupture as an archetype. At this point, the best we can hope for is for them to just not design future content around needing Rupture agents and hope for the best, as we just brace this oncoming storm. But until then, this has been Arekado Zodan, and I'm clocking out.